Welcome, everyone. My name is Peyton Lauderdale, and I'm one of the co-founders of Gathering Hope. And today I have Anna Kettle with me for Slaying the Stigma. And what this video is for is to educate and share more about miscarriage and infant loss to people who might be new to this community or want to support someone who's experienced a loss. But it also serves as encouragement and hope for those who have been through it, or their loss is fresh, or maybe they're even a few years out. But it just serves to bring hope to women to know that they're not alone and that this is a topic worth talking about. So welcome, Anna. I'm so excited to have you here. You're my first international guest. So tell us a little bit about you. Tell us about your family, some of your passions. And then after that, after you introduce yourself, we would love for you to share as much of your story as you're comfortable doing.
Okay, great. So yeah, I'm Anna Kettle. So I'm a marketing manager. That's kind of my day job. I work in healthcare. I'm also a writer and a blogger, and I published my first book earlier this year with Tyndale. It was a Christian devotional on slowing down and resting. And I'm also a miscarriage advocate here in the UK. I run a miscarriage network, well, miscarriage and infertility network, actually.
Okay.
And that has grown out of my own story of miscarriage and losses over the last few years. So yeah, it's great to be here. I love your organisation and what you're doing, Peyton. And,
thank you very much. I want to talk about your online community and your book a little bit further down the road, but share with us how you came to be passionate about this community and your story.
Sure. So I guess my story starts in 2017, December time. So I'd already had one little boy. My little boy's 6.5. He's called Ben. And I got pregnant with him fairly quickly after getting married, got pregnant right away, no issues with infertility at all. And so from my point of view, maybe a bit naively, I thought at the time, well, okay, well, that's good. There's nothing wrong with our fertility. You know, we were like in our early 30s, and I thought, great, we want a couple of kids at least, that'll be fine. Yeah. So when it came to, he kind of turned 2 and started child, daycare, we kind of felt ready as a family to sort of extend and grow. Started trying for another child, got pregnant right away. So again, we just had no indication that anything would be wrong and no reason to think that. And that was like in the autumn of 2017. And then at Christmas time, I had a miscarriage in the first trimester, and was just really surprised by it because, I don't know, maybe somewhat naively, I thought, well, it worked fine last time, so everything will be fine. And I guess
I think we're all kind of naive, right? Like,
yeah,
like if we have a successful pregnancy, like why would we assume that? Like why?
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, keep
I guess
going.
That's human nature. You kind of want to believe the best until something goes wrong, don't you? And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But yeah, so it was a bit of a shock to us. But at the same time, I sort of, once we got over that initial sort of sadness and sense of loss, we just quite quickly thought, well, it's one of those things. Unfortunately, miscarriage happens to like 1 in 4 women, I think. And, just put it down to statistics and try again. Like, I had a number of friends who'd had miscarriages, and I just sort of thought, well, they went on to have, more children, and I just assumed it would be the same for us. It is for most people. And so we just tried again right away, and it took a few months, and then we got pregnant again, and then we miscarried again the following summer. And that was where I kind of thought, wait, 2 miscarriages in a row isn't normal. Like, I don't know anyone that's happened to, really. And that was kind of the first time that I started to kind of worry about it a bit more and think this could be more than just like a one-off. But nonetheless, kind of, certainly in the NHS in the UK, they don't really investigate until you've had 3, and they don't really deal with it as a big deal until you've had 3 in a row. So we just kind of thought, well, maybe it's just really bad luck, and kind of trying to trust God in it all, and just thinking, well, let's try again. And then we had a 3rd one, and then that was followed by 2 years of infertility. So at that point, you do get more investigation and more care under the NHS.
Okay.
And you do kind of, so we had a lot of investigations, and it just, you know, lots of tests for different things that can cause miscarriage, and it just, all the tests turned up nothing and gave us no answers really. And they just kind of said,
hard.
well, yeah, it is hard to have no answers. But they were just kind of like, well, you've had one child already, so the best advice we've got is just keep trying, like try again. So that was kind of what we'd planned to do. And then I guess because we were moving later into our 30s by that time, and we'd lost quite a lot of time based on those few miscarriages.
Yeah.
By that point, we were like struggling to conceive a bit more. And I knew it would take a bit longer because I was a bit older, but like we never got pregnant again. So it was like at the moment that they were like, well, you should try this and this medication, and, you know, kind of this is our sort of advice. We weren't really able to put any of that in practice. And so for the last 2 years, we've just been kind of in this limbo really, where we've had 2 years of secondary infertility and just not being able to get pregnant again, to even see if we can take one to full term with more treatment and medication. Right. And so, yeah, so we've kind of got to the point now where it's like, well, if this was going to happen, it probably would have by now. So we've kind of just had to accept that we're probably not going to have any more children. So that's our story. It's still, in some ways, we're quite in the messy middle, because I can't 100% say that would never happen. You know, God is able to do anything, I know that, but it's very unlikely in human terms. Yeah. And also, you know, would we consider adoption or other options in the future? Possibly, I don't know. We're still weighing all of that up. So sort of, it's not necessarily the end of our story, but I think it's probably coming to an end in terms of our natural sort of, you know, the period we've gone through of recurrent miscarriage. I don't think I'll have any more pregnancies, though, you know, never say never. So that's very much where we're up to. And then over the last couple of years, just have really been trying to navigate all of that loss and pain and those questions, and like, why God, and where are you in the middle of all of our loss? Sort of in that faith space, just really kind of drawing other women around me who are in a similar space. Like, because I'm a writer, I've blogged a lot on the issue all the way through. It's just kind of been my way of processing some of that stuff. You know, I do it in my journal a lot, and I also do it online. And then obviously over the last year during lockdown, just had a bit more headspace and decided to start this miscarriage and infertility network for women in my area in the UK. We're just still starting to get that up and running, because COVID has meant everything's moved a bit slower, and not been able to do physical events or anything until now. But that's very much our vision, is very much just to create a space where people can come and just connect with other people that are going through the same thing, and also a space to express some of that stuff that so often like myself and a friend who set it up, we just met so many women on this journey who never tell anyone, never talk to anyone. You know, I've got work colleagues who've gone through this and they just don't speak about it. They don't, you know, and I just think it's such a heavy thing to carry alone, and
very heavy.
It was our heart that no one carries this alone, and that therefore we just wanted to create a safe space on the internet, and also for women to share their stories, and also just connect with other women in their area who are going through something similar. And I know some of what you do in Gathering in Hope is like a similar idea, but I just feel like there's so many people that do struggle on this, struggle even now today with the stigma, and still continue to carry it alone. And I think social media and the online community has changed it, and things are
a little bit,
but I still think, I think it's improving, but I still think there's a long way to go in terms of the quality of care women get, and also just the kind of aftercare, you know, counselling, peer-to-peer support, which is what we're really about in the space community, and and also spiritual support. You know, like, I don't think churches are always very well equipped to deal with some of this stuff, and
100% agree with that.
And so that's really where we're at the moment, sort of trying to navigate it ourselves, and also support other women who are in that space.
I really appreciate you saying that your story maybe coming to an end, but it really, it says a lot that you're willing to share your story in that messy middle, as she said. I think there's so many people who feel like they have to have it like tied up in a bow. Like, I've had my rainbow baby, and we all know, that that doesn't take away the pain of the loss. But for people outside of the community, it seems like it does, right? And so I just wanted to say, and like affirm, I love that you're doing this in the middle, and that you're not necessarily like, okay, I'm all better and now I can help other people. Right?
Yeah.
I
think you're right. And it is true, because so many stories, particularly in faith communities, are about like, illness and then healing, like before and after. And I understand why that is. But also there's so many stories where people never get their healing, or never get their, they never get their rainbow baby, or they never get their answers, certainly not this side of heaven. And that we live in that kind of tension between what we hope for and what currently is, and the reality that our world is still broken, and not everything is the way it should be. Like, I genuinely don't believe that miscarriage is ever God's plan.
No.
And yet sometimes that's reality we live in, or infertility, we live in that. And so it's so important, and I think more and more people are starting to realize that we need to kind of talk about these hard spaces, because so many of us live in these hard spaces where, as you say, not everything's tied up with a neat bow and all finished, and most of life happens in the middle, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Even if it's not this issue, there's something that's not neat and tidy in your life, and that's just life for most of us on planet Earth, I think.
I feel like it's really freeing. It's really freeing to hear other people say, like, I don't have this all figured out. Just like saying, it's clear that you've shared that you have experienced miscarriage and infertility. And so that has enabled other people who wouldn't normally talk about it to talk about it, but also to say, like, I don't have all of this figured out, frees other people to say, oh, good, I'm not supposed to have this all figured out. I'm so glad I'm not alone in that too. I'm not alone in my loss, but I'm also not alone in, like, I haven't figured this all out. I don't know how to navigate every single thing. So I know this isn't one of the questions I sent over to you, but you mentioned the care that women receive, like both during, after, and then like peer-to-peer support. Can you educate me a little bit on what the UK system is like for women who experience miscarriage?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the NHS is great in that you get support, free at the point of access. So in terms of the medical care, you can go in to a hospital, support for a miscarriage, and they're very good at dealing with the medical side of it. So you can get, the like surgery that you need, the appointments that you need, all the access that you need free. But what isn't great is the kind of wraparound care, so the emotional and social stuff that comes around that. So
oh, hang on just a second, we've got a gap in there we go. Okay, Anna, you were just telling us about the wraparound care in the NHS system.
Yeah, so the actual medical core care, like the scans, the operations, any surgery you have to have, any appointments you need to verify the miscarriage or anything like that in the hospital is all free. But what the NHS doesn't tend to do so well is the wraparound care. So the counselling, the after support, like it's literally like you'll get the medicalised part and then it's like, right then, goodbye. And it's just like out the door, regardless of whether you're a woman who's had one miscarriage or like 6 in a row. It's, it's very limited in terms of Yeah, it can be very patchy. I think some hospitals will do it, but it's very hit and miss, and it's hit and miss to who gets it. And yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure that it's the best environment to get it anyway. Like, I think that's why we've looked at peer stuff, because I think actually it's in the weeks and months that follow when you're processing. Like sometimes when you've just been to an appointment and found out that you've had a miscarriage confirmed on a scan or something, you can be in total shock at that moment. And it's not even like, I don't actually even remember whether I was offered counselling after that on each time it happened, because I don't recall being offered any, but I may have been and just not taken it on board at the time.
Yes.
I don't know. I have friends who've said they have had it offered then, and friends who are pretty sure they haven't. But the point is, it's probably in the days and weeks afterwards when you're Googling, when you're like thinking it through, that you actually need it. So
yes. We have talked about putting stuff from Gathering Hope, like trying to get it into hospitals and stuff like that. And Carol, our co-founder, we've talked about this a few times. Like, I'm pretty sure I came home with a gigantic folder full of stuff, but I don't remember anything that was in there or where I put it or what, I don't, you're right. Shock is a great word to capture that moment.
Yeah.
Anna, what do you think has been the most surprising part of your journey so far?
I suppose all of it is surprising. I never expect a miscarriage to be a part of my story at all, as I said, because the first pregnancy went so smoothly. And I especially found recurrent miscarriage a huge surprise, because we'd already had a healthy pregnancy. Like, I knew my body could do it, and then suddenly it was saying, no, I'm not going to do it again. And that was surprising. And we still, to this day, don't really understand the reasons why. There is no, it's unexplained recurrent miscarriage, so there is no medical diagnosable reason. But I think as well, what's been surprising is that it was so much tougher than I ever imagined. Like, I think until it happens to you, you can think, oh, well, miscarriage is, sad, but just one of those things. And and I don't think until it's happened to you, you realize quite how horrific and how deeply it can mark you, and how deeply it can mark your life. And particularly if it's happened more than once, or if that pregnancy was like a long awaited pregnancy, maybe it's after an infertility period or after IVF. Like, it can really just be quite a deep pain that stays with you much longer than you would expect. And I think miscarriages shaped me in ways I never expected it to, or I never imagined it would. I've had to press into my faith and into God in deeper ways.
Okay. Can you tell me more about that?
With writing and it's marked me in ways that I just never imagined it would, because I never really understood until it happened to me how.
There we go. Anna, if you would tell me a little bit about how you have leaned into your faith during this time, and what does that look like for you?
So I think a part of it is just being really honest with God. I think as Christians, we can so easily feel like we've got to put on a Christian performance, as it were, to like kind of almost tell God what we think he wants to hear. Or he seems to be like all positive and keep it all together, and like, God, I'm just going to trust you and show you how faithful I am. And then kind of like we somehow think God will bless that, and then maybe we'll get the outcomes we want. Or certainly that's how I used to think. I think often the challenge is God wants to meet us where we're at, not kind of, he doesn't want this false kind of happy Christian front we can put on. He wants us to be real with him. And if you see it time and time again when you look in the Bible, you look in like Psalms, the book of Job, lots of the different characters in the Bible, weren't scared to be honest about their raw, deep emotions when things went wrong. So I think we can be honest with God, we can be real about our pain, and just we don't need to shy away from that. Like, God can handle our emotions, he can handle the tough stuff, and we can take our questions and our doubts and our pain right into his presence and get there and just have it out with him. Like, bring up our questions and not be scared of that.
I think that is a good word for people who are really in the depths of like the anger phase of this, which I don't know that necessarily goes away 100%. But yeah, that I know that someone needed to hear that you can be honest with God. And I think that really deepens our relationship. Like, if we're just brutally honest, I think that offers a space for the Lord to like speak into the depths of what we're experiencing. And that kind of leads into my next question is, where have you seen hope? So, and what has kind of helped some of your healing to happen?
Yeah. So I guess where I've seen hope is that, obviously that bit that I've just talked about, hope in God, and not that hope necessarily happens in terms of getting the outcomes you want, but realizing maybe through my journey that hope isn't about things always working out the way you want them to, but hope has to be rooted in God himself, in Christ alone, as we so often sing in songs, and and that our hope is in heaven and in God, in our relationship with him and his salvation and what he's done for us, not what we want him to do for us here and now. And that actually hope isn't so often, like, I think the pregnancy and loss communities can talk about hope in terms of rainbow babies, and I think the church as a whole can talk about hope a lot in terms of answered prayers and healing, and it's all outcomes based, and none of that stuff's wrong. Of course we hope for all of those things, but that can't be where our ultimate hope is, because what happens when we don't get those things? Does that mean our hope doesn't work, or we're left with no hope? No, like, our hope has to be in God alone, and all of those other things are gifts, and they're beautiful when you get them, and they're great blessings, but those things aren't guaranteed, and that can't be where our ultimate hope is. So that's kind of been the learning curve I've been on, to realize, actually, where is my hope? Is it in getting another baby that I really want, or is it in God and in what he's already done for me? So
I appreciate you saying that. Outcome, that phrase, outcome based faith, really, like that ministered to me, like, right here and right now.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that it's easy, and I'm not going to say that, like, I feel that all day every day, like, my emotions still, it doesn't mean that it's not painful at times, but I think it takes your faith deeper than kind of just what you get on the surface. And I think that's been a really hard, I'll be honest, it's been hard, but it's been a really good process that's really deep in my faith. And like, now I know my foundation's much deeper than what happens to me. And I'm not sure until we go through some really hard stuff that we can always say that. So I don't think suffering comes from God, or that God creates everything bad that comes in our life, but I think sometimes he uses those things to deepen our faith, and that nothing is wasted in the kingdom of God. And I think for me, the process, I would certainly never say that God intended this for my life, because I think he's good, and I don't think that miscarriage is a good thing, but I do believe that he's used them to strengthen my faith in ways that I never imagined at the beginning of my journey. And so I think that's kind of where his redemptive nature comes in.
I think that the gift, and that's not a really good word to capture what I'm saying, but like the gift and the ability to hold the tension of like so many things, I think as people who have been through serious suffering, we have this ability to hold space and hold tension for so many things that people who have not gone through something like this I don't know how they have. I know I certainly didn't before, you know, and I thought I did. But you're right. Like the expansion of faith after something like this is really, really powerful.
Yeah.
Tell me more about the community that you're creating right now.
Yeah. So the ethos is really that we don't want anyone to have to carry this stuff alone if they don't want to, and that everyone in our city, in our area would have somewhere they could go. Even if, you know, lots of people have friends and family they can talk to, but even if you do, like I did, but even so, not all of my friends and family fully understood what I was going through because they hadn't dealt with it themselves.
Yes.
So it's about creating that space of just understanding and being held and being seen in your pain and in the process. And you know, so often it's so easy for other people to come along and be like, oh, well, aren't you over that again? Yeah, you know, it happened a few months ago, you know, move on. And
wow.
I think it's just about holding that space for people to just be where they're at and to know that they're seen in their struggle. And yeah, obviously it's not just a faith space, like lots of Christians are involved, but it's not just for Christians, it's for anyone who needs that space.
Awesome.
And we really encourage like kind of two things that have been really key healing things. So like one of them is around writing and journaling and sharing your story, whether that's kind of writing it down on the blog and sharing it in that space, or it's just sharing it at an online group. So we are hosting online sort of gatherings where people can just come and share their story with other women who've been through something similar.
I love that.
So I think there's something really healing about just sharing our story and that solidarity of knowing you're not alone and identifying with someone else's story. And then, yeah, and so there's that kind of connection thing. And then obviously part of it is, you know, for those who are Christians or have a faith basis, then we would encourage them to press into God with those questions and that healing process as well. And for those that don't, we would pray for them and kind of do that on their behalf a little bit.
Oh, beautiful.
So yeah, so I guess that's the thing. And also just create that space, because I think healing takes time. And that's certainly been my experience. And particularly where you talk about areas of like miscarriage and infertility that aren't finite. So we talked about being in a messy middle, and certainly with infertility, like that is a process that can go on for years and years of your life. And how do you live in that limbo for a long time? It's really tough. And so just kind of creating space where people can take time and be gentle and just kind of be where they're at and kind of learn to be gentle and patient with themselves. Grief takes time, doesn't it? And we live in such a hurried, rushed world, and yeah, that is just not how this works. It's not, you don't get a quick solution in most instances. It takes time to heal from something like this and to move on. And, you know, eventually life does move on, whether you move on as a childless couple through adoption or you get your rainbow or whatever the outcome is, but it takes time. And we want to create that space for people to sort of, work through it at their own time and to come out stronger rather than just a broken, you know, because I always say, like, you can come out stronger, but it's not guaranteed. It's like, do you take that pain to God, or do you kind of just bottle it up and become bitter? Because I think it can go either way, and it depends what you do with your pain as to kind of what the outcomes are. And so yes, it can be something that deepens and strengthens you, and certainly for me it's motivated my writing, it's motivated me to do something that reaches out to other women. And I definitely agree with your sort of view and experience that, like, I wouldn't have been so active in reaching other women who are broken and hurting and having that empathy had I not been through all of this myself. But I do think that it's a choice, like it's a choice what you do with your pain and whether you allow it to shape you in ways that are healthy or less healthy. So kind of encouraging people to try and do it in that way that's healthy through just peer support and connecting with other women who have been through something similar. And
it really matters to talk to somebody who's at least got some sort of idea of what you've been through. Your stories might be different. You know, the exact mechanics of what you've been through may be different, but like, there's just some sort of like bond, and it's almost instant when you find out that someone else knows what it's like to lose a child, and all of that that goes with it, not just holding a baby, but like the lifetime of that child afterwards, you know?
Yeah. And I think also when you're right in the middle of it, it's really great to have people in a community who can say to you, I know how you feel. I know how tough it is right now and how sad you feel, and that you feel like you'll never be over this. And in a way, you never will. You'll be changed by it. I don't think you get over it. I think you get through it, and learn to live with life with that as your new reality. But at the same time, it's great to have women who are like, you know, you will laugh again, you will hope again, you will dream again. Like your future is still going to be good, whatever lies ahead. It's great to have women that are just a few steps ahead in that process, who can perhaps stand on the other side and say, I've been there, and it won't always feel like, you know, it won't always feel this painful. The pain won't always be this close and this immediate. So yeah, some of that is really good as well, to have kind of a community where there's women who've been through it a while ago and some women who are still very raw. And yeah, that's a really lovely dynamic as well.
It is beautiful. I love watching women who are older come to a gathering, or like you're saying, like in you know, an online format, however that happens, of like, I don't know that it's mentorship, but just that someone can see that there's still good that can happen, and that you'll take a deep breath again. And like you said, you will laugh again, you will dream again. That's really so beautiful. And I love your methodology of encouraging people to do it in a healthy way, of like writing and journaling. And so that leads me to my next question for you. Is your writing is beautiful. And I just love, like, your wisdom really shines through what you say. So share a little bit about your book.
Yeah, so the book was a book that I wrote when I first had my little boy. So I'd kind of, I'd kind of been through, I was like a marketing professional, and I'd just been through having him and was returning to work, and kind of just almost added parenthood into my already quite full life, you know, full-time work and everything else, that, you know, church work and everything else that I was doing, social life. I just thought, I just motherhood into all of that as well. And what I quite quickly realized was that I was overstretched and overextended, overstressed out, and kind of not giving the best of myself to anyone in that season of my life, and particularly not those in my own household, like my husband and my son. And just realized through this process that, like, I needed to slow down and cut some things out and prioritize better, and just change the whole way that I approached life, that like more wasn't always better, and that I went through a real season of pruning and like just cutting some things out. And kind of at the time I was blogging more on that. This was like pre-miscarriage days really, and that was what I was blogging on at the time. And kind of out of that blog that was all about wrestling with God, about how do I live in your rest. Like I know rest is something you've got as a gift for us, and I want to live in your rest, but I don't know how that looks in this crazy modern world we live in, where everyone's hurried and stressed and rushed and too busy. Like, how do I live in your rest in my everyday life? And I was blogging a lot on that theme, and just really wrestling with it in scripture at the time. And kind of a series of those blogs got picked up by someone at Tyndale, and basically they came back to me and said, would you turn this into a series of devotionals?
I love that.
And so that's where the book Stand Between Your Toes grew out of. It became 100 devotionals for slower, simpler, more soulful life. And so it was kind of that idea of, how do you kind of get that holiday feel, you know, that holiday kind of by the beach kind of feel in your everyday life? Like, is there a way you can not just have a rest once a year when you go on vacation for a week, but actually live in rest every day? So that's kind of the idea behind the book. And it's just a series of really bite-sized devotionals that are like a verse, a short reflection, and then like a prayer and a practical tip on like resting, slowing down, those kind of themes, simplifying your life. So yeah, that's what it is. And it finally came out this spring, which it seemed like a long time in the making because I wrote it a few years ago, but
Yeah.
actually the publishing world moves slowly, but it worked out really well because it was launched just as we were coming out of a year of lockdowns and pandemic being really crazy. Certainly here in the UK, things were only just starting to lift in terms of restrictions this spring when it came out. So it felt quite timely because I feel like people have been talking about this a lot more, having slowed their lives down, albeit enforced during COVID. And
right.
Yeah, so the timing kind of felt really God-given in the end. And that was really cool. I mean, when I wrote this book and the blogs that became the book, I couldn't have even imagined that we'd lived through something like the last 18 months. So yeah.
There's no way anybody could have seen what a mess this was, but I love that. I love the timing aspect of that. That's beautiful. I did not realize like the backstory of how long it had taken to come out and things like that. That's so awesome. God's timing is really good timing, whether we can see what that's going to look like or not. I do want to ask you, where can people find you after this interview? How can they connect with you?
So I'm on social media, Anna Kettle Writes. So I mainly hang out on Facebook and Instagram. So I'm at Anna Kettle Writes on both of those. And I'm on there most days just posting ideas or thoughts or chatting to people. So I love to connect with people in those spaces. And I also have a website, www.annakettle.com.
Okay.
So just really simple because it's my name. And yeah, I'm on there blogging regularly still about both the miscarriage theme and sort of rest and slowing. Those are kind of my two big themes really. And so I'm on there, and you can find out more about the book on there and sign up to my email. So I do like a monthly news shot just with some more content on these themes. Or you can check out, if you want to check out more about the space community, the Miscarriage and Infertility Network, you can go to, we've got a separate website for that, and it's thereisspaceforoyouhere.com.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, so you can find out lots more about the community there too. But yeah, please connect with me. I love to talk to people.
And you're podcasting too, right?
Yeah, I'm just doing a series at the moment. It's like kind of a new thing, and it was partly about promoting the book. So it's called Slow, Simple, Soulful Podcast. And it's just kind of snippets and ideas that are sort of riffing on the book and different themes and that around slower living. So it's really bite-sized. I just didn't want to do anything complicated. So I just thought I'll just do 5-minute bursts because this is for really busy, hurried people, right? And so last thing they want is an hour-long podcast. And so yeah, they're just like 5-minute snippets. Yeah. And
those 5-minute bites are like sometimes just what I need, and all the time that I have to listen and not do something else at the same time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love your short but powerful podcast. Those are really awesome. Anna, thank you so much for joining me today and all of our technical difficulties. But yeah, I really appreciate you being here, and it has been a pleasure to visit with you.
Yeah, same. It's been lovely connecting, and I've just really enjoyed our conversation. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, me too. Thank you, Anna.